This meeting will come to order. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the hearing examiner on August 24th, 2021. I serve in both a decision-making capacity and an advisory capacity to mayor and city council. There are two types of public hearings that the hearing examiner conducts. The first is a legislative hearing whereby I formulate recommendations on certain land requests. My recommendations are then forwarded onward to the city council, who makes decisions on legislative matters. The second type of public hearing is a quasi-judicial in nature, meaning that the requests are specific to a parcel of land. I am authorized to make decisions on requests for special use permits, variances, and planned unit developments that do not involve the subdivision of land. However, any decision I may make tonight is by no means final. Anyone that believes that he or she has been aggrieved by my decision has the right to file an appeal to the city council. On quasi-judicial requests that involve the subdivision of land, rezones, and annexation, I am authorized to only make recommendations to the city council, who will make the decision. The hearing procedures are as follows. Staff will first present a report on the application. The applicant or the applicant's representatives will then present a summary of the request. Testimony of those in support will be taken, followed by testimony from those in opposition. And finally, I will allow the applicant or applicant's rebuttal. After rebuttal testimony is given, public testimony is closed, and no new oral or written testimony will be allowed unless I choose to reopen the testimony. The time limits for testimony are as follows. The applicant receives 10 minutes. Those in favor, neutral, opposed, and rebuttal are allowed 5 minutes each. I accept oral and written testimony from those in attendance, but only if you assign the sign-up sheet available at the front of the room. When testifying before me, you must come to the podium, state your full name and address, and be prepared to be sworn in, or state that you've been sworn in. One final note, if you're here tonight, you're angry, that's okay, but please don't take your anger out on us, the staff. There are times when it's difficult to remain apart from emotional testimony, but we are charged by law to keep a clear record of proceedings, consider factual testimony, and stay within the city's rules and regulations. And please turn off your cell phones if you have one. I thank you for your courtesy to us and to others who move through the process. With that, I'll ask Cindy to swear in those who wish to testify.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The business for tonight, the first item is the approval of the minutes from July 27, 2021, and that I do approve those items. Housekeeping item now, we have 3 items on the agenda that will be continued to a future date. I'll make these announcements now in case that you're here to participate in these hearings. The action item SUP 21-6, the Timber Grass Apartments, will be continued to October 26, 21. The action item ANN 21-1, PUD 21-1, known as the Enclave subdivision, will be continued to the September 28, 2021 hearing examiner meeting. And lastly, the action item case SUP 21-11 will be continued to the September 14th, 2021 hearing examiner meeting. So if you're here for any of those items, sorry about that, and we'll move on to the 2 that we have. The first order of business, well, I'll just mention, we have the Sterling Ridge subdivision is the first order of business, and the second item of business is Nino AKA subdivision. So with that, I'll ask staff to make the staff presentation on case number AN 21-7, SUP 21-12, which is a request for annexation of, well, there's 48 some odd acres, 48 47.82 acres with a zone designation of R2 and a comprehensive plan designation of medium density residential. Concurrently, the applicant is requesting a preliminary plat for Sterling Ridge subdivision, 178 lot development, including 160 single-family lots, residential lots, and 18 common lots. There are currently 2 homes included in the annexation that are proposed to not be platted as a part of the subdivision development. And with that, I will turn the time over to staff to make their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Deb Root, Senior Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and I have been sworn. As indicated, the applicants are making application to annex a 3 properties that they're annexing a portion of 2 of those properties for a total of 47.82 acres. I did provide to the hearing examiner as Exhibit A18, a late exhibit from Sterling Ridge developer, indicating that the city, or that the county had recently approved a property boundary adjustment to essentially remove those 2 homes that are currently part of the subject properties from, basically separating them from the portion of the property that's to be annexed. Those deeds have not been worked by the county. These properties still show as part of the parcel that is being requested to be annexed. It's the city's contention that these properties should be annexed and not create an enclaved area of property that, goes forward in perpetuity for into the future, with leaving services and jurisdictional challenges with those properties. So from a planning standpoint, enclave properties are not in the best interest of planning and for the city on an ongoing basis. The applicant has indicated that those property owners have no desire to annex to the city at this time. The preliminary plat that is proposed, if this property is to be annexed into the city as medium density residential, as shown on the comprehensive plan map, future land use map, the development has been worked through and several revisions at this point, but it is in compliance with the code and the state statutes as far as the preliminary plat is concerned for the 173 lots with 8% open space. There are some concerns regarding the Weymouth lateral and that being pushed to the south side of Joplin Road onto another development, which at this time we are unclear whether or not there's an agreement with that property owner to have that Weymouth lateral built on their side, and that would be the Mandalay Ranch development. They have indicated that they do not intend to vacate Ware Lane, which was also a part of a discussion with the city and the Canyon Highway District 4 and the developer. And in A18, that late exhibit, they indicate that they have no intention of seeking vacation of Ware Lane at this point. Again, the development is in substantial compliance if the city allows the annexation to move forward as presented, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Root. There are a couple of housekeeping items. In addition to late exhibit A18, I received via email a late exhibit A14, a plat, and well, actually there's several parts of that. from yesterday, like to enter that into evidence, exhibit 814, looks like there's,
Right, and it'll be
Picture
814.1, the revised landscape plan.
yeah. And, just to note that they're part of the record and part of the consideration. And having said that, this exhibit, 814 in its entirety, does that, substantially alter the proposal, or just, is this just, putting some fine points on, the previous proposal? Is there substantial alteration here?
No, in the staff report, what staff had available to attach to the staff report, did not reflect some revisions of common lots and things that had occurred. And so this 814.1 reflects the plat that is before the hearing examiner tonight.
Thank you. And, well, let's stay on that topic. The staff is satisfied that they have, in whole, presented a subdivision that is in compliance with the ordinance and the codes.
Staff is satisfied with the, yes, except for that there's some question regarding the Weymouth lateral and where that's to be located. If the property owners of Mandalay Ranch are not amenable to relocating that Weymouth lateral to the south side of what will be Joplin Road, then there is the potential that they will have to redesign the lots that are affected by that Weymouth lateral location outside of the right-of-way.
Thank you. There is discussion about the out parcels that I guess we can comprise, well, going from west to east, one on the corner there of Woodford, Ward Lane and Martin Front, and then 4 parcels or partial parcels that go to Middleton Road. And has the applicant provided a statement as far as why they do not wish to have these parcels annexed and rezoned?
They did not provide a statement as to why. They indicated that the property owners did not want to annex to the city.
Thank you. And with this application, the staff report indicates that there is a development agreement that would go along with the rezone. It would define the rezone.
There is a development agreement that goes along with the annexation in the preliminary plat, yes.
And is there a draft of that development agreement, or is that something the city council will develop at their hearing?
We do not draft that development agreement. You know, basically, we do not put the conditions into the template until we go to city council. But the conditions that are indicated within the staff report at the annexation decision and the preliminary plat conditions of approval are where those conditions then travel forward to the development agreement along with the engineering memorandum.
Okay, thank you. Now, the exhibit A18 that you introduced is a letter dated yesterday from the applicant, Bonnie Layton. Does that in any way materially change the application, or is it just fine tuning and reporting the land division in the county?
Yeah, it was prefaced that it was in response to the staff report that they had received, so some clarifications and some follow-up to some items within the staff reports.
Thank you. Now, the, land division in the county where, one of these, or I guess two of these parcels were, submitted in their original form, let's say, prior to this month, as part of the application, and now the county has reported, or has presumably recorded, land divisions, for what I assume is the purpose to, make them separate lots outside of the footprint of the site plan. Is that how you interpret that, or
Yeah.
you assume the purpose of that land division is?
So the way I understand what was provided in Exhibit A18, the county did a property boundary adjustment, and so currently the application is for the 3 large agricultural parcels, and those 2 homes are a part of that. The county chose a path, or the applicant, in conjunction with, to do property boundary adjustments of those 3 large agricultural parcels. So basically, 2 of the large agricultural parcel boundaries were shrunk to surround the residential parcels, and the 3rd boundary then it combined to make one whole large agricultural piece, or this piece that they have proposed for annexation. That's what the survey in that letter, A18, looks to have done.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. And the final question on that is, do those boundary adjustments materially affect the proposal in front of us tonight, and the way the proposal was advertised, legally noticed and so forth?
They don't currently affect those, how the property was noticed, because those deeds, if they've been filed, I don't know that. What I know is that we were provided with a property boundary adjustment approval from the Development Services Department. Whether deeds have been negotiated or, activated or not is not provided to us, and is not currently shown on the GIS mapping. It is still the 3 parcels that were advertised, and the land mass that they're requesting to annex has not changed.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was getting at. And in your opinion, would this constitute a great enough change that would require a new hearing or new advertisement of the affected parcels? Would that trigger a necessity for renoticing and having another hearing?
I don't believe it would, because they've always asserted that those parcels would not be a part of this application.
Okay, yeah, I'm just looking at the procedure here, that we're all good with the procedure and can move forward to some kind of decision or recommendation here.
Yeah, staff's preference would still be that those out parcels be annexed, but again, that will ultimately be a county or a city council decision. There are state statutes that allow for the city to annex those properties without approval of the property owners, and city council could choose to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Ruth, do you have any other concerns with the plating and the development proposal, other than talk about the drains and the Ware Road status? the way with lateral?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I would like the applicant to make their presentation, please.
Is this on? Pardon me? Yeah, it's on. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, that would be helpful. Good evening, Mr. Eggleston and staff, folks in the audience here. Can you hear me okay?
Name, address,
Okay.
where you sworn in.
Yes, my name is Bonnie Layton. I'm a senior planner with ND5 at 690 South Industry Way in Meridian, Idaho, 83642, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you. Proceed.
I want to thank you tonight for your time and consideration for our application and for all the work that staff has put in to helping us develop a project and an application that is consistent with the City of Caldwell's comprehensive plan and its zoning code. I'm here tonight on behalf of Sterling Land Development to request the approval of Sterling Ridge. First things first, a little bit of housekeeping, if I may. I think we've kind of touched on that, but to clarify for the record, there were a few discrepancies. I noticed that you caught them in your reading of the agenda tonight. Our application is for annexation and zoning of 47.82 acres to R2 medium density residential and to subdivide the property into 173 single-family residential lots. This application does not include the two existing homes adjacent to this project. I ask that you refer to Exhibit A11, where we did actually address that those properties were not part of our application. It was a letter that I think it's dated July 14th, sent to Ms. Ruth. Our client does not own those properties, nor do we have the right to purchase them, and therefore we do not have the right to request that they be part of this application or that they be annexed. So I can elaborate a little bit more on the history of the PBA as well in a few moments if you'd like.
No, proceed.
Okay. Additionally, I did send a letter to staff this afternoon, which you do have in front of you. I believe it's exhibit entered into the record as A18. In general, we are in agreement with the staff report. We had a few items that we've highlighted for further discussion. At the bottom of that page, page number 1 of the letter is item 2.4, and that should hopefully clear up any remaining confusion on what ground is part of our application. As Ms. Ruth identified, our application has always contemplated only the property boundary as shown on the screen in the map and as shown in our application documents. So the letter that I provided, as well as the documentation from the county, cross-references that and should clear up any sort of property boundary questions. We do have an approved PBA, so there were 5 parcels out there. There's still 5 parcels. We just did an adjustment to reflect the current conditions of the site out there and what we were actually under contract and under authority to purchase and also submit for application. We also have a recorded record of survey for that, which was included as part of that letter. So thanks for letting me provide that additional information. This first slide before you on the screen is showing that Sterling Ridge is located in the northwest corner of Middleton Road and Joplin Road, which will be a new road. It's just a half-mile north of the Middleton Road and the Highway 2026 intersection. It's a fully signalized intersection, so that will provide for a good access and traffic flow. A future roundabout is planned for the intersection of Middleton Road and Joplin, and our preliminary plat design accommodates enough area for the future development of that for the corridor study that, staff directed us to review. Joplin Road does not currently exist. Once it is constructed, it will enhance the east-west connectivity in the area, especially since the access from Marbles Front Road onto Middleton Road has been closed, for safety reasons. Out there, it's at the bottom of the hill, Marble Front and Middleton. So shifting the east-west access up to Joplin will provide for a lot, enhanced safety in the area. Just a little bit of background, our existing and surrounding conditions. This slide, you'll see that our future land use designation is medium density residential. We're surrounded by approved and existing development. Right-of-way dedication and improvements along Middleton Road and Joplin Road will provide for enhanced vehicular traffic flow and connectivity. And water and wastewater lines are available to the south of our project through the Mandalay subdivision. And we are coordinating with the owners on the design and construction of that infrastructure. Just to go over a little bit of the project details, as I previously mentioned, our request is to annex and zone with a preliminary plat for 47.82 acres. There will be 173 single-family home sites and 14 common lots. This overall density is 3.62 dwelling units per acre, and with 3.92 acres or 8.2% qualified open space. The lots are generally 60 feet wide with a minimum lot depth of 100 feet. The lots range in size from 6,000 square feet, which is the zone minimum, up to 10,780 square feet with an overall average lot size of 6924 square feet. Frontage improvements along Middleton, Marble Front, Ware, and Joplin roads are all planned as part of this project. The required landscape buffers have been included in our design of the site, and direct lot access from these roads is prohibited. Initially, we had the project entrance a little further to the east, to line up with our larger, and entering into our larger park area. Our traffic engineer felt that that was safe. However, staff had concerns about our entrance, and the desire of city council would probably require that our entrance align with the entrance for Mandalay off of Joplin. So we went ahead and shifted our primary entrance to the west to accommodate for staff's comments and concerns on that. We worked with the engineers of the Mandalay project to get that location in the proper spot. Additionally, and Deb touched on this as well, in our first meeting with staff, it sounded like Ware Road was gonna go away. And then through further conversations and communications with the Highway District, it was decided that Ware Road would remain. So again, we modified our plan to accommodate for that. Initially, we had platted right to our boundary edge on our western boundary, so we shifted that over to address those concerns from staff. So now we are not fronting on, our lots are not platted to the property boundary. We've accommodated for the right-of-way. For Ware Lane, we have a common lot that backs that to limit any access. And as Dick mentioned, we will not be proceeding with any sort of request to vacate that road in the future. It will remain, and the improvements will be made according to plans staff requests. The 3.92 acres of qualified open space is evenly dispersed throughout the site. We have 2 large park areas. We've connected those parks with pathways running through the site, making them easily accessible for residents of the project. So again, we modified the plan after meeting with staff here a couple of weeks ago, and ended up the biggest change to that plan was the long linear east-west pathway in block 3 to add some more connectivity to the project. So we addressed those concerns that staff had as well. This is an open space exhibit. Again, the city of Caldwell has some fairly specific requirements as to what counts as qualified open space, non-qualified open space. We're also identifying the right-of-way dedications, that we're providing with this project, as well as, our drainage storm ponds. That was probably the last, revision that we submitted over with the landscape plans that just reflected, there were some comments of where we had shown those originally. So we just further identified them for staff, and then the landscape architect provided some updated drawings. And those drainage lots are identified in the yellow ones there on the screen. Let's see. So this slide, it just is an exhibit of our phasing plan. It identifies that you'll see that Joplin Road is part of, and the frontage improvements are part of the first phase of the development. This will also include piping of the Weymouth lateral, and we are currently coordinating with the owners of Mandalay on that. We did go and meet with Pioneer Irrigation District. Initially, Mandalay has the Weymouth lateral coming across their entrance. I don't know, does this show on the light or on the screen if I try to do it? Not really, okay. So initially, the Weymouth lateral comes up to Joplin, and then Mandalay was showing it being piped across their entrance. And then at that point, the way it currently exists is it crosses Joplin and runs down our frontage. That creates a couple of bends in the line that Pioneer Irrigation District said, boy, if you could coordinate with the folks at Mandalay, we'd rather have a straight run anyways. After it leaves our southwest corner, it crosses back down Joplin and is in the ditch on the south side of the road. So it just makes sense to coordinate with the folks at Mandalay, just have a straight run, keep it nice and clean. So that's what we're doing, and so hopefully that addresses those concerns that you had in your questions to them. Let's see. Also, as you can see from this slide, we've got 4 phases to this project. We've evenly dispersed the number of building lots per phase, 48 in the first phase, 41 in the second, and 42 in each of the remaining phases. These next 2 slides are elevation examples of the homes that we intend to build in Sterling Ridge. They include both single and 2-story homes. Some of these will have 3-car garages, possibly with a 3rd bay sized for an RV. We're currently building these homes in other communities throughout the Treasure Valley. So at this time, I think that, let's go back to the site plan here. That concludes my presentation. On behalf of my client, our team of consultants, and myself, again, I'd like to thank staff for their time and their assistance. We believe that Sterling Ridge is in compliance with the comprehensive plan, the Caldwell City Code, and a fine addition to the city of Caldwell. We request that you approve our application for annexation and our preliminary plat, and thank you for your time. I'll stand for any questions.
Yes, I do have a question. When this project was conceived for annexation, what was the, I guess, the purpose or the statement for not wanting to annex the parcels that are held by the landowners?
Mr. Eggleston, it was my understanding that their desire was to remain county residents. They were interested in selling a portion of their property, but wanted to remain, their services exist on their properties. They're not in need of city services and wanted to remain in the county. That's the extent that I know of any reasoning. I would have to defer to my client. I wasn't part of those conversations.
And are they still the owners of the proposed property or the project?
Are you, I'm not sure if they have closed yet on the property or not, or what deposits have been made. I'm not privy to no purchase and sale agreement or timelines with that.
Okay,
When we made application, we did have the required, owner authorization forms, that were part of our application, and typical of an application like this.
okay, I have no more questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
And, with that, we'll go to the sign-up sheet. Now, do we have a video freedom, or video, witness?
I believe he's for the next case.
Oh, okay. With that, I've got, Brian Cinderhoff.
Do not wish to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Cinderhoff. And then, as a neutral, testimony from, John, Ogden.
I'm fine. I represent Mandalay Ranch. I just wanted to hear.
Okay. So, that is it. I do have some questions. This is just a curiosity, Rob, for you. The Maple Front Road is dead-ended. Why is that, or is there at some point they're going to run that through, open that up to Middleton Road?
No, thank you, Mr. Eggleston. The Middleton Road has always been connected to, are you talking about Middleton Road or Marble Front? Okay.
The northern road.
Marble Front has always been connected to Middleton Road up until recently. That is under the jurisdiction of Canyon Highway District 4. And they wanted to remove that connection because of safety concerns. If you're driving north on Middleton Road, right as you come over the hill and you come down this hill, the intersection's right there, and there's not great visibility. And so they wanted to get rid of that connection for a long time. In addition to that, it is not a mile or half-mile road. It was actually on a quarter mile. And so the intent is to have 2026, and then a half mile north, you have Joplin, and then a half mile north, you have Lincoln. And so that road didn't fit in the master plan, and so they've had plans to remove that connection for some time.
And so the proposal has that section of that road on the northernmost part of it. See there, are there plans to complete that? I don't quite understand what's going on with that road.
That is a good question. The intent is that road has to be maintained because there are still residents that use it. To the extent that paving has to be completed, I'm not exactly sure if that was something, I believe that's in the staff report, but I'm not positive if that's a city requirement or if that's something that Canyon Highway District 4 wanted done. And I apologize for not knowing that off the top of my head. The other three streets, which are going to be all publicly used, have to be improved to the center section, and I believe Marble Front is the same, but I'm not positive on that, or if it's going to remain as it is, because it's a dead-end road. So the consensus is that there are not, hardscape improvements required on Marble Front Road. And it's our recollection that that was discussion that we had some time back with the highway district. So curb gutter and sidewalk frontage improvements are required on Ware, Joplin, and Middleton, but not, Marble Front. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, I just didn't know where we're going with that. Appreciate the answer, thank you. Ms. Root, I have, one more question on the annexation. The state statute, that's a Title 50, -222, it talks about the different kinds of annexations, in particular having to do with the small parcels as enclaves. Is it your opinion that if this were annexed and rezoned as proposed, that it would leave these parcels in enclaves such that they could be annexed by the city on its own initiative without consent of the owners?
The way I read, Title 50, 222, 3A, II, and 4BI in that title is that, yes, the city could, on their own, without the consent of the owners, annex those enclave parcels, because those parcels, with the annexation of this property, would be surrounded by the city and therefore meet the conditions of that language in the title.
Thank you. The concern here is, I guess, the provision of services and the ability to provide services and regulate policy on those lands. The state code itself, the legislative intent looks at this question, and it says in 50-222, Item 1, the legislature hereby declares and determines that it is the policy of the state of Idaho that the cities, the state should be able to annex lands which are reasonably necessary to assure the orderly development of Idaho's cities in order to allow efficient and economically viable provision of tax-supported and fee-supported municipal services, and to enable the orderly development of private lands which benefit from the cost-effective availability of municipal services in urbanizing areas, and to equitably allocate the cost of public services and management and development in the urban fringe. Now, in reading this, I would say this talks and speaks directly to this application for annexation, rezone, and the creation of enclaves through a legislative action. Mr. Would that be your impression that the city needs to look at that intent of the code, the legislative intent in this case, and try to make that annexation for all the property?
From a planner standpoint, in reading that code, I would say yes. I don't know where city council lies within this required annexation versus not. From planning standpoint, from a future view of the city and its municipal services and the overlap of police and fire and county services for properties that are not annexed, it is in the interest of the city to not have enclave parcels.
Thank you. The concern I have been at this position for a great length of time, that is it a policy or is it customary, or the approach to annexation is to either create enclaves or B, avoid enclaves?
Correct, and I don't again, I can't speak to what the policy was prior to my tenure here. I've been here approximately 2 years. We did have another application where that property was, required to annex, even though it was not going to be a part of the plat. They were required to annex, which they did, and, a member of council acknowledged that they were glad to see staff, including that, piece of property as part of the annexation. So I can't speak to what the overall policies of the city are with regards to annexation. Typically, we don't have a lot of, I have not had applications come forward with a lot of out parcels that weren't going to be annexed.
Thank you, Ms. Root. The second part of the, municipal code, or the Idaho State Code, 5222, item 2 talks about, in any annexation proceeding, all portions of highways lying wholly, or partially within the area of the annex shall be included within the area annexed, unless expressly agreed between the annexing city and the Government Board of Highway Agency, providing road maintenance at the time of annexation. Now, we have this, is it Marble Front? Again, that we would be annexing just a small portion of that. Again, that seems to be creating a problem with the services provisions to that little strip of road that would be different from the other properties along that northern boundary of this overall portion that we're looking at. Question for Rob: would annexing just that small chunk of Marble Front present any kind of challenges in providing services for that?
In my opinion, it does not. The city has a great maintenance agreement with the highway district, and we maintain that, so they know what sections of road they maintain, and we know what sections of road we maintain, and it's very clear. And so we have situations like this all over the city where parts have been annexed into the city of Caldwell and parts are still county, but our maintenance agreement helps us understand very clearly who maintains what, so I don't foresee any issues with that.
Okay, and that would not be hard surfaced, you said in your earlier testimony.
Not as part of this project, correct.
Okay. It's currently a dirt road, in other words.
I believe so.
Or gravel or something of that nature.
Yes.
Thank you. With that, I'll close the testimony and go to the analysis portion of this hearing. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Yes, the applicant may make rebuttal to the previous comments. I'll open the testimony back up for the applicant to make rebuttal. If you would care to come up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Eggleston, for the opportunity to rebut. So again, just in the discussion of the out parcels, let me see if I can back up to our vicinity map here. So there's a number of properties that have been annexed into the city, and this was, to the south, obviously, we've got Mandalay, there's some to the southwest of us, to the north, there's some to the east coming in, and so really what we're looking to do, there are some parcels that are out parcels, as you've identified, some to the north, there's, one to the west. You know, unfortunately though, we don't own those, we don't have any control over them. And some of those parcels are not owned by the folks that we are contracted with, so we really don't have any say. I think that is right. You know, the city does have some ability, per the state code to annex those, at a later time, not part of this application. But really we're focusing on trying to bring a large portion of this, area into the city, provide connectivity with Joplin Road, which I think is really essential for the area, especially for future development. Also the improvement of Middleton Road, along our frontage, I think is important for the development that's happening out in the area. And so these are all positives. Yes, there are some out parcels that we just don't control, but overall, I think the improvements that we're bringing to the area, far outweigh, something that could be solved later in the future, you know, with either city action or as those, other owners decide to come into the city. So, appreciate your time again this evening, and, request that you approve our application.
Just one question on the original application, the landowners that we're speaking of in the out parcels were the applicants, is that correct?
Yes, there is one that, was never part of any sort of property boundary adjustment. There's a house up there in the kind of center off of Marble Front, and then also, I mean, there's the school site that's not quite, it's not in there yet, but I don't know if they've got city services, but Head Start school. That was never part of our application, but just in, you know, in general, we've worked to try to, with the property boundary adjustment, some of that was to clean up some past things that were done through the county and through certain processes that ultimately the county recognized, that, approving the property boundary adjustment cleaned up, the properties and made them, reflect more accurately how they were being used, as parcels in the area, so.
And, Ms. Layton, to your knowledge, have any of those out parcel landowners expressed any intent to develop or to join into this development at some point?
To my knowledge, those owners have expressly stated that they do not intend to develop. We have provided a stub street for access and some infrastructure stubs that we were required. Of course, Marble Front, as Rob discussed, that's under Canyon 4 jurisdiction. I was out there the other day. They had put some new gravel down, it looked like, platted really nice. What you don't see from these photos is on the north side, the north edge of Marble Front is a fairly steep drop. It's probably what, 20 feet difference there. So eventually at some point, Marble Front will maybe come down and make the turn, but, you know, who knows when that will be, and, you know, obviously we're not privy to any of that information. So we've tried our best to adjust our plan to, address any of the concerns that staff had, and, I think it's going to be a great project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And with that, I'll close the hearing and look at the comprehensive plan analysis. With this type of application, annexation and rezone first, and then there's essentially a second application for the preliminary plat. The hearing examiner has the choice to make a recommendation either to approve or deny the application, recommended approval or denial to the city council. And in state code with an annexation, there's always an accompanying rezone in that rezone is driven by, typically the comprehensive plan land use designation. In this case, the request is for the R2 rezone. And with that rezone, the city will typically, seek and, ask for a development agreement that is, a creature, you might say a child of the rezone action itself. And according to state code, that's allowable to address certain circumstances or specific circumstances that don't occur in other parts that would have that same zoning. And just to set the groundwork here of my consideration, first of all, we have to talk about does this comply with the comprehensive plan? The staff report does have some reservations about the configuration of the rezone and annexation. In other words, we're talking about the lands that are not part of the application, but when we look at the comprehensive plan designation, that essentially squares off the block that we're looking at. And the similar kind of a consideration would go with zoning in some cases. But the question is, does it meet and fulfill the criteria of the comprehensive plan? And on page 13 of 70 of the staff report, it talks about goals and policies of land use. And in my analysis of this, goal 4, where we talk about create communities that generate cost-effective public services and infrastructure, I don't think we're quite there with this proposal. And the concern I have is not annexing the larger piece of land up to Marble Front, defined in Hull as Marble Front Road on the north, Middleton Road on the east, Joplin Road on the south, and the Wayne Road on the west. And in comprehensive planning, you tend to look at the bigger picture, looking at chunks of land, not particularly in regards to individual parcels. And I think referring to the Idaho statute, which I read earlier, 50-222, annexation by cities, it very clearly lays out the intent of the annexation code. And I will state again, it talks about to ensure orderly development of Idaho cities in order to allow efficient and economically viable provision of tax-supported and fee-supported municipal services, to enable the orderly development of private lands which benefit from the cost-effective availability of municipal services. And I think that has to be addressed in the context of this, that the city in the long run would benefit from not having these enclaves. And it's been my experience in decades of planning that you eventually have to deal with the enclaves. It's inevitable, and it has to do with as development occurs and densities increase, and the extension of public services becomes more difficult, that there is more intense development, and those enclaves become parts that have to be, or eventually do become a part of the city and achieve urban zoning and seek urban type development. Again, based on my experience and the reading of the Idaho State Code 5222, that it's better to address those kinds of concerns at the point of annexation. And I understand, according to the testimony, that the properties that we were talking about are not specifically part of this application, but they are part of our comprehensive planning, and, part of, the request is to be annexed and have the kind of zoning that would allow for this, type of development. And, it's not too hard to foresee that the other parcels, that are on this larger chunk of land, might be, developed at a later date, and probably not that much later, given the kind of development pressures that we're looking at. The issue always is provisions of service, and who is eligible for service, and how does the city, the local government, provide those services. We just ended a legislative session where House Bill 389 was passed, and that throws into doubt as to whether annexing properties like these will provide enough revenue, at least at the outset, to make those services happen. This is a real concern. The Mayor and Council have talked in terms of moratorium on development, but the inclusion of the other properties, the so-called out properties in this proposal, might help sway the balance for the kind of services needed for this magnitude of a subdivision. And I think that we could say that the application does comply and does fulfill the goal 4 in the comprehensive plan, which is a necessary condition to make recommendations for a zone change and for an annexation. And the goal is to, of course, create communities that generate cost-effective public services and infrastructure. And I think in order to meet that goal, that we have to look at annexing and rezoning all of the parcels in this block. And with that, I intend to include that as a condition in the development agreement. And I'll proceed ahead with the findings and facts in annexation. But one more note on that, that Ms. Root did, in her testimony, talk about these kinds of enclaves could be annexed at the incentive solely of the city in accordance with the state statute. So, in other words, these could be annexed at any time in, if the city develops a plan for annexing these kinds of lands, that could happen without the consent of the landowners. And from that, this might, preclude that kind of annexation in the future, where this land is in the city and would become prime real estate for this type of development. With that, the findings of facts for the annexation: the Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. And the conclusion of the law: the Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the city council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. And with the recommendation for annexation, and in this case rezone, based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number ANN 21-7, a request by Sterling Land Development to annex portions of parcels 34880, 1000, 3408, 801-000, R3408-701-200, R34088000, 47 acres of 5.11 acres, more or less, with an R2 medium density zone designation for the properties located south and east of Marble Front, Ware Roads in Caldwell, Idaho, is approved with the conditions of approval, which I will amend. That's the original statement we're looking at. Instead of 47.82 acres, I believe the total acreage for those parcels is 58.64, and it would address all the properties that are bounded by Marble Front Road on the north, Middleton Road on the east, Chaplin Road on the south, and and Ward Lane, Ware Lane, that's a typo. Ware Lane on the west, and those parcels inclusive, the R2 zoning would be extended to that full block of land, as would the annexation action, and this would be entered as item 9.4, that these boundaries of the annexation and rezone would become a clause in the development agreement accompanying the R2 rezone. Also, the Board of Decision, the annexation case, does have item 9.2 and 9.3 as stated in the staff report on 14 of 70. With that, we'll take a look at the preliminary plat and the findings of fact for the preliminary plat. The Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. Conclusions of law for the preliminary plat. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met. The hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. The recommendation on the preliminary plat, based on the findings of facts, conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number SUB 2112, a request by Sterling Land Development for preliminary plat approval of Sterling Ridge subdivision consisting of 47.82 acres, more or less, to be subdivided into 173 residential lots for the properties R3408801000, R3408701200, and R34088000, located south and east of Marble Front and Ware Roads in Caldwell, Idaho, is approved with the conditions of approval below. On pages 16 and 17 of 70 in the staff report, under section 15, there are conditions of approval, 15.1 through 15.18, that are all accompanying my recommendation to the city council. And I would like to note that there are the exhibits that are entered as late exhibits that are further amend the preliminary plat application. Those are the exhibits that will be recommended to city council for review. And I may need some help here, there's additional, conditional approval, to make this, 15.19, concerning, the resolution of the treatment of the Weymouth lateral, and, in conjunction with, its, impact on the subdivision south, the Mandalay Ranch, and this will be resolved, as discussed in the testimony tonight, between the applicant here and the owners of the Mandalay Ranch. Rob, a question on that, is that correct, that is that, clear in framing that condition of approval?
Yeah, I think, from what I've heard in testimony and discussions, I think it's clear that the developer is obligated to, work with Pioneer on the relocation of that drain, and it sounds like the intent is that they plan to work with the Mandalay Ranch development as well to figure out the exact ultimate alignment. That would be something that, during plan review, we will be keeping our eye on that to make sure that it's being addressed.
Thank you, Rob. We'll try to make a condition approval of that, and, with that, I, conclude this hearing, and, thank you all for your testimony, and we'll try to make some sense out of this, as it goes forward to the city council. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is, thank you, case number PUD 21-2, the Nino Outcut subdivision, and, a planned unit development proposal, for 23 residential lots with an overall proposed density of 5.92 units per acre with an average lot size of 1,584 square feet, and a preliminary plat approval for the subdivision and approval of development agreement in conjunction with the requested PUD. That portion would go to city council. With that, I'd ask staff to make their presentation on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. As indicated, let's see, Deb Root, Senior Planner, 621 Caldwell Boulevard, Athens, 1. This is a request for a planned unit development on 5.92, or on 4.67 acres, I think. And this property was previously zoned medium density residential prior to this application being made. A PUD within the medium density residential zoning district allows for up to 12 units per acre. Initially, the applicants had proposed a much denser development, but as staff reviewed those things, there are standards within the planned unit development ordinance that requires that they provide open space, 10%, a minimum of 10% open space, qualifying open space. They also had to make accommodations for the roundabout that it will be at that intersection of Usick and Florida. There is also the Caldwell Lowline Canal, which traverses the property on the northeast boundary. And there's, a 16-foot easement from top of bank on both sides of that canal as well. We do have a small chunk of property that lies to the east of, the Caldwell Lowline Canal. Currently, they're proposing a future bridge connection to that property, but as it sits now, there is no access to that property, therefore cannot be counted as open space, but it must be landscaped and maintained as part of the project. The developers have reduced their number of units, and these are all proposed to be individual townhomes on individual lots. And so they've reduced that number to 23. There were still some concerns by staff with regards to Unit 1 at the entrance of the development on this property, being too close as people come in and out of that development. And but there isn't necessarily anything in code that says they can't have it. It's just a safety concern from staff's perspective about that development, or that unit being placed there. Because the applicants proposed a planned unit development, the road that comes into the development is required to be a public road, meet the public road standards to provide public road access to every single lot that's within the development. There are opportunities, if this were not a PUD, to have that be a private road and only meet the fewer developed lots of approximately 12 to 13 lots on this 4 acres, 6 units per acre, in the R2 zone. The underlying comprehensive plan designation for this property is business, which provides for neighborhood, commercial, retail type of opportunities versus the current zoning of R2 on the property. And so the city planners, at the time that the 2040 comprehensive plan was developed, had modified that underlying zone or underlying designation, indicating that this corner might be more suitable to a commercial type development versus residential. The plan that has been presented it is unclear whether there is actually 10% qualifying usable open space on this property for the use and enjoyment of the neighbors, and whether or not the development meets the criteria of amenities that are being provided for the proposed development as well. They are proposing a really, small dog park. At one point there was a tot lot provided, and I'm not clear where that tot lot is now being proposed to be provided for, as the layout has changed significantly from previous layouts, as they've worked through meeting the code requirements. Staff has not received significant feedback or comments from surrounding property owners. One one comment was received that we were not opposed to the townhomes, but that, they hoped that the roundabout would be completed prior to any development of those units on the property. Because due to the, heavy volume of traffic, the increased volumes of traffic at this intersection that currently exists. Staff feels that we still have, that there is more density on the property, that the design and development of this property lacks some, imagination, I guess, would be the best way to put it. I'm not sure that townhomes or that multifamily is the best use of the property. As the application stands, it very minimally meets the code for infill development and therefore could be approved. But, I'll stand for questions.
Take this route. When I review a plan of year development, I like to get very specific, with the section, 2A here in your staff report, page 235, where it talks about, having to meet the criteria of these, few of these instances, or two or more of the following instances, under ordinance 2967. So I'll just go through these that, you indicated that, one, development offers a maximum choice of living environments by allowing a variety of housing and types. It does not meet that. Two, develop promotes mixed-use projects which are functionally integrated with the development and provide services of primary use. That criteria is not met. Item three, the development provides layout which preserves and properly utilizes natural topography and geologic features, trees, scenic vistas, or other vegetation. The standard does not apply to this project. And then we get to item four, land parcel is constrained or otherwise limited by some obstacle, feature, geometry, condition, or easement that interferes with the applying standard development process. And we did note that it does have some restraints and constraints, including the canal, the odd shape, the triangular shape, and being divided by that canal. So it does meet the criteria for number four. Okay, that would be an affirmative. And then for item five, so that's 1 out of 4, the development encourages infill development. It contributes to compatible design to the existing neighborhood. And you note that it can be considered an infill project, and the subject property is zoned medium density residential. So this may be compliant with item 5, given it the 2 required to meet the standard for application of a PUD. So that gets us in the door. I just like to make sure that we're meeting those standards at the outset. Your testimony is that there are still a number of outstanding issues with this, and there are also items brought up. I received a late exhibit to this, in fact, a letter, project narrative from the applicant. I received August 23rd, 2021, and this was in the late exhibit.
It's actually part of this, I believe it's part of the staff report. I did send you that for the ability to look at the PDF copies of the plat and be able to zoom in on those for you. And that was, that letter was part of that email but it is part of the staff report as well, I
Okay,
believe.
so it's not related to it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was, entered properly. Looking at that, that email transmission that you just referred to, there's an 11-page letter here, to the applicant, describing the requirements that had not been met as of July 2nd, 2021. And there's quite a long list of items that needed to be addressed at that time. I am assuming that most of those items have been addressed in the current application, and there are no newer exhibits, or since this was noticed.
Correct.
Okay, great. Just wanted to clarify that. Yeah. Going back to your staff report, talked about, first of all, I guess, Lot 1, which I guess would be the one that's on the northwest end of that street closest to the main highway. Is that the one that may be too close?
Yes, that's correct.
To the ingress point? And so the setback on that, presumably that setback is to provide a clear vision around the intersection there. Is that, what's the standard we're trying to achieve with that? Or why does that not necessarily comply with the ordinance?
It in reality complies. The director and staff have consistently asked them to keep those units away from the entrance access point, where the vehicles from that unit would be backing into the access into the development.
Yeah, I agree that's an issue. In the Capel map, this is question for Engineer Rob is, how close is that ingress egress to the, I guess, the outer edge of the proposed roundabout? Does that meet the standard for distance separation from the roundabout?
Yeah, Mr. Hearing Examiner, the access point itself is at a sufficient distance we have determined from the roundabout, and so there's no issue there. The concern is that, and I don't know if your question was addressed, just that first unit on the north side, if you have someone backing out of that driveway, there could be cars coming around the corner, and so that was really the concern. The access point itself, we feel like is acceptable where it's presented.
Okay, Rob, what approximately is that distance from the ingress egress to the outer edge of the northern edge of the roundabout?
I can't read that dimension. I believe it's close to 286 feet.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. Well, Rob, are there any more concerns with the infrastructure, the street layout, the fire turnaround and such that you see on this plan before us, proposed plan?
No, I don't have any concerns. I do want to applaud the developer this is a difficult corner for access, and we do not permit any access on Ustick Road. And so they're constrained to have an access at a very specific location, and they've been able to accommodate that. And so we are satisfied with what they propose for access. As for the turnaround, the hammerhead there, as long as the fire department's okay with it, we don't have an issue.
Just for my reference, the hammerhead, that little dead end part that points towards the southwest, how long is that? Is it like 50 feet of pavement there for the turnaround?
That is
just roughly
21. It looks like it's probably somewhere between, it's probably about 40 feet or so.
Okay, yeah, should be, okay. Now, the same question, at the entryway, there are 3 parking stalls there, to provide, visitor parking, I presume. They seem like they would have the same issue about backing out onto the entryway. Does that present a concern for traffic circulation with those parking spots there?
So you bring up a good point, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Being that this is a public road, there actually is not permitted 90-degree parking off a public road unless it's a driveway for a building or a facility. And so we would have to take a closer look at that to determine if that is acceptable as it sits there.
Yeah, it's not an ideal location, being just a few feet from ingress, egress. And, it'd be really tough to see somebody making a right turn into there, as you're backing out. That would happen really quickly. Mr. Hearing Examiner, that's something that we probably have to take a closer look at. I don't know that that would constitute holding up a recommended approval on that alone. I think that's something we could work through and find a location where that maybe is a little bit more appropriate. Okay. This route, let's get back to the comprehensive plan designation. You know, we have what might be a viable development here for medium density residential, but what are your thoughts about the business / commercial land use designation in the comprehensive plan, and would that provide as, say, a more suitable use for this corner?
So, Mr. Hearing Examiner, suitability is a question of whether or not somebody can make that work for that proposed use, basically. The access constraints are of concern. We have had other developers kind of look at this property for commercial purposes, and again, the constraints of the access, the right-of-way dedication for the roundabout, the canal constraints. It's a tricky piece of property, and whether it be residential or commercial. Again, my predecessors chose to identify that for commercial development on the 2040 comprehensive plan, maybe because it hadn't been developed and has sat there and for a long time. Residential development right on that roundabout isn't necessarily ideal, but it would take the right type of commercial use and someone to utilize that for that to be viable commercial as well, the use. With that said, the city council is growing more concerned regarding commercial frontage and properties that possibly should be commercial along these corridors and things. This is a tricky property and will be tricky whether it's developed residential or commercial.
Thank you, Ms. Root. So they're not seeking a zone change, and it's somewhat out of the question, but I just wondered how I guess you said it, that it's, a very tricky place to develop, and, perhaps we should be happy with the bird in hand. Now, some of the specifics here, on page 3 of, the staff report, you have a, based on review of the applicant's plat, the PUD request deviates from the above requirements as follows: rear yard 10 feet, interior yard 0, minimum lot area 1,586 square feet, and minimum lot frontage goes from 45 to 24. These seem to be on the extreme edge of exceptions to the standards, the dimensional standards of the zoning code. Does that make this, I guess, does that make this project less viable with this wide swing of deviation? Probably not typical of a planned unit development. Is this pushing the boundaries as far as the variances to the dimensional requirements of the code?
Again, Mr. Hearing Examiner, staff feels that their density is a little high for the configuration, shape, and the proposed planned unit development with the amenities that are proposed. They could have asked for leeway or relief from the required amenities as well. Typically, what we're seeing in planned unit developments for townhome lots are in the nature of 3,300 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So
Double.
Is it extreme? It appears to be. Yeah.
Now, let's get to the amenities. It's not clear to me, on the exhibits I have, what those amenities are. Could you enunciate those for me and say whether that is sufficient to meet the code?
So they've indicated as amenities on this plat, a sport court, which I don't know whether that's a basketball court or a pickleball court or what. It's a sport court, and a gazebo, but they're in pretty small, limited space in what's a remainder piece of property that can't have a residence put on it. So it's my feeling that city council is not going to view that favorably. But again, the parcel is very constrained, and they could request relief from those amenities. They have not, but they could. And then they have a small dog park identified as well.
And then there's a discussion about the bridge across the canal to what would be the northeastern portion of the property separated by the canal. If that were installed, would that constitute an amenity?
If the bridge were installed?
Yes.
If the bridge were installed and that property became available for the use and enjoyment of the residents within this development, again, if a dog park were over there, or if it was just a small open space and it's conditioned that it has to be landscaped and maintained over there. But if the bridge were installed, then that open space becomes available as well. So it opens up a little more of the open space for the use and enjoyment of the applicants. Would the bridge be an amenity? It would provide for access, is what it would be. So I suppose you could say, oh, that's part of the pathway.
And Ms. Ruthie, is the bridge a condition of approval in this? I think there's some question whether the canal company supports that.
So basically what I was told by the canal company is that they just have to comply with the Bureau of Reclamation's requirements for application and that. Typically, the BOR and Pioneer Irrigation have not precluded the construction of crossings, bridges on those, facilities. But they have to go through a process to do that and go through the work and the application to get that done.
And, just my, clarity here, is that bridge, part of the proposal here or condition of approval?
I'm looking to see if it should be part of the condition of approval because they're proposing it as a future bridge.
Okay, thank you. There has been some discussion with City Council about the treatment of open space and the amenities in planned unit developments of this nature. And the sort of the discussion point is the open space integrated into the design, or is it just what's left over? You have, in other words, its function on the plat is incidental to the buildings and not really constructed as an integral part of the community. Do you see the open space proposal here as being more of an afterthought, or does it seem to be integrated into the design?
I believe it to be what's left over, and not well planned for this development. But with that said, again, the constraints of the property add to that challenge of providing integrated open space with this development. The requirement of the public street versus a private roadway that would have been 24 feet versus 53 feet wide in that development. So it provided additional challenges for this development team to come up with a plan that, you know, as we've moved through many iterations of this development, there have been a lot of different plans come before us. This is not our favorite plan, and certainly not the best open space design for that. But it also, the other plans did not include a public roadway, which is required for the PUD. And so there's been a lot of changes. Some of the design didn't initially include the roundabout right-of-way and the landscape buffers that are required that they cannot encroach into, and those kind of things. So there is more open space. It's just not qualified open space. So there's a 25-foot landscape buffer that's required along Mystic Road, and a 15-foot landscape buffer that's required along Florida Avenue. So there is going to be quite a bit more green space than what's provided for the 10% qualified open space as well.
And Ms. Ruda, they achieve that 10% requirement in open space?
It's unclear to me based on the information that was provided and, calculation-wise and things. They provided a drawing that shows, here's our open space, but not necessarily calculations that show that that's 10% of the plan.
Again, this clarification, the property that's on the other side of the canal, I guess you'd call it the southeast portion of this property, is that in open space, is that counted, or it have to have the bridge to be counted?
Yeah,
Access to be counted as open space?
It's currently non-qualifying open space, but it is open space, but it's non-qualifying, and they have it shown that way.
And then, given the bridge and pedestrian path, it may qualify as open space?
It could eventually qualify.
Okay.
And to answer your question regarding the bridge and the conditions, 10.9 conditions that the bridge has to be provided, shall be installed prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy of I don't know why that's an occupancy of
Yeah, page 13.
50% of the housing being completed. I think something's wrong there, but.
Okay, so, I would like to address this issue we've already talked about, the number one unit at the ingress egress point and the parking. I suppose that one of the solutions for that would be just to eliminate that unit. It doesn't look like there's room to move anything. What would be your recommendation to rectify that issue at the entry point?
Staff has requested that they remove it, but again, I'll let the applicant speak to that. We ask that they remove it.
All right, and then one more question along that. Here would be the 3 parking stalls there opposite house number 1, unit number 1. How many are required for the density or visitor parking? How much is required, and have they met that requirement?
Yeah, so there's standard parking for each unit they've met with their design. The 3 additional units are required because of the request for it to be a PUD and that parking requirement. The lots that are less than 45 feet in width, which all of these lots are. And so for every 4th unit, there's an additional parking space required. And so 3 is the number of units that they're required to provide. 3 additional parking spaces.
That's the minimum standard. Thank you. Well, I suppose that is my question. I'd like to hear the testimony from the applicant. Thank you, Rob and Dan, and go to the applicant's presentation.
Hello, my name is Amy Johnson. Address is 24 East Main Street, American Fork, Utah. And I have been sworn in.
Yeah, presentation.
So, as I pull this up, I just wanted to address a couple of the items that were discussed in the staff report. I appreciate your guys' time on here. As said, multiple times on this parcel, when we first were under contract on this parcel, we actually were looking at it from a business perspective. We came and we brought it out to market to figure out ingress and egress was the problem as far as for a business constituent on whether they would, on making this piece of property marketable. We had brainstormed multiple ideas on that, and either they were turned down in roundtables or they just didn't work for the city's vision. And so then we decided, okay, what else, how what else could we do? And we felt like, being able to provide an attainable housing product for the citizens of Caldwell would be the best project for here. So that's why we went towards, townhomes, including, we're kind of following, there's another 9-acre parcel off of Usick in Florida that are also all townhomes in that area for it. So we're kind of matching that. As we said multiple times on this, with that, is because of the constraints of what we have on how we can come into the property, and then we have some extreme constraints as far as how much land is being not taken, but used for the roundabout there, and then the canal on the other side. So we are very limited on exactly how much overall the fill of the space is going to fill, you know, with the design standards that Caldwell has and their landscape requirements, it's still going to feel very green and roomy, with that, in my opinion, for that. So, as far as the amenities, we are open to crossing the canal. We have been working with the canal company for a bridge permit on there, and we would be open to adding that to our open space requirement. If in that event that we are successful with that, we would move the dog park across there. And our initial plans at the beginning, we had always shown the dog park across the canal, but we weren't allowed to show that with the actual bridge permit, so we moved it back over there. And then, like we said, yes, we have a sport court and gazebo. We feel it's only 20 units versus other people, you know, this is an infill PUD, so it's a little bit different than, 25-acre PUD that would have the exact same number of amenities there. So, we feel that even with the number of units that we have, we're still providing a significant amount of green space and amenities for it. But would be amenable to making those recommendations that you have and correcting them for city council. The other part I just wanted to make sure, on unit 1, we felt, the reason why we didn't remove it is we felt that the individual, because you cannot exit out of Ustick, is not going to be backing out into the road. They're going to be backing out into the dead end where the hammerhead is and leading out for it. So we felt that, it didn't propose an issue in our opinion, and that's why we also have the parking, same thing. We felt that they're gonna be backing out into the back, not into the road. We do have space that we could put those 3 parking places, that are currently across from Unit 1 into the hammerhead, and I checked that with, I'll let my engineer speak, who is on Zoom, to go over those things. He'll also address the calculations that were done in CAD on the open space requirements as well. Let's see. Let me, I didn't actually go to it by the clicker, or you can just click it, it's fine.
Just tell me when that was.
Yeah, that's fine. We've kind of already gone over all this. This is the location, that kind of, go ahead and flip to the next part. As I said, it is an R2 development there. We have 4.56 acres. Go ahead and go down, here. So here shows, the different drainage and where we have. If we removed Unit 1, if we need to remove Unit 1, something that we've done in other communities, it's not necessarily actually listed as an approved amenity, but something that we could propose is raised garden beds as well for a community garden. It's been super successful in other communities that we have created. So if that would be, an applicable amenity, we'd love to be able to add that as well. So, let's see, I just wanted to note, in the staff report, it shows that we didn't show elevations. This is our elevation that we're proposing for the development, so there's 2-car garages, plus there's 2 cars in the driveway, plus, again, our initial design that we had created, you know, I just, when they say the amenities are an afterthought, initially we had, a private road, and we made it a whole circle. And the amenities were centered in the middle, around that. And we understand, we get it, that that's not applicable, so I'm not like trying to contest that, but I'm just saying that we have worked with that, we have made lots of different revisions, we're really trying to work with the city to make this an improved product, with those constraints, with the canal, with the huge amount of, with the roundabout, and then, like we said, those landscape buffers of 25 feet and 15 feet on there. So, I think, there's the floor plans, like I said, the 2-car garage versus like a 1-car garage, and these are just other, like, design features that we have done in other products with it, so. And then these are, you know, the sport court, the gazebo, tot lot, and, a top lot, right, so. Yeah, so I think that's it, I'm finished. I don't know if you go direct, or if you wanna ask some questions, I forgot.
Yes, I do have some questions. Thank you for your, presentation and testimony. Let's stop there on the elevation drawing. Now, is this, compare that to the photo that's like 2 slides beyond that, is it the one and the
So
same?
those are, no, they're not exactly the same ones, these are different fixtures of it. They are similar style, similar floor plan as far as size. But the other ones, the elevations we have, that's a little bit more modern style, this is a little bit more traditional.
And, you're walking up into this unit, so the main floor is, in the proposal, not the photograph, but the proposal for me is saying where your main floor is elevated from ground level, by 4 steps you're showing there.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could be, the slab on grade, which are the 2?
We're on slab on grade in this development.
Okay. There will be
So that,
2-story and with similar, fenestration, modulation of the frontage there.
yes, according to this drawing, yes, that's correct. It's a 2-story with the bedrooms up top, 3 twos, 2
Now,
beds, 2 baths.
Are there these designs of ones that you have used, in other projects, or,
We've used,
are we going to be guaranteed for this look, or is that just typical, is that a generic look?
so we're still open on the actual, we will follow the design standards as far as the construction drawings are required for Caldwell City. This plan has been built in other cities in Utah, but not in Caldwell.
Okay, well, I just wonder how close, you would intend to hew to these, exactly to these drawings. That's what the city would expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, the line of question has to do with, well, the planning and development is, we have great expectations for, design, open space and amenities, therefore, giving you the higher density. In this case, the density is, more than double what would be happening in a standard subdivision in an R2 zone. And so, kind of think in terms of, it should be really nice, and what we're, seeing here is kind of generic.
Sorry, just so I understand, when you're saying generic, are you saying the house plans are generic, or are you talking about the site plan?
Actually, both.
Okay,
I have, the PUD ordinance, you know, it's basically, it's a trade, we're trading density for a higher quality development, and, this seems, you know, sufficient, but it's still rather pedestrian. And I'm not seeing anything, you know, vis-a-vis our discussion, with staff about integrating, open space and the amenities into the design. It just seems like, okay, we've got our houses and we're gonna shove those things off in the corner. It's,
we didn't wanna put them, I guess I was looking, being a mother of five myself, I didn't wanna put them towards the roads, and towards the roundabout from the back. As we mentioned, we had them in the middle, because I felt like that was the best design, but with the 54-foot road, that's really our only option, I feel. I guess we could possibly separate some of the units and put it, you know, backing the canal there. But we really are constrained as far as the location-wise of where to put those. And that's why we felt, okay, this way, they can be safe, they can be fenced, and it'll be very open, especially with that hammerhead fill, that, okay, I'd rather have my kids playing at the dead-end street part instead of, you know, playing ball, playing dead-end street, all those things, instead of off of Florida.
okay, and speaking of off of Florida, what is your, you talk about fencing, would the fencing be along the property lines, or around the individual units, or both?
So we can have fencing on the back of, like, private backyards, so they can have each of theirs. And then we're fitting the design standards, around the amenities. We were planning on fencing that area.
Okay, that part's not shown, and also the amenities themselves seem a little vague. I mean, I think we need, more design work on this site plan, to have a clear presentation to city council. The one thing the city council wants us to do at this hearing and the staff to do in their analysis is have this buttoned up, have, you know, all the I's dotted, T's crossed. I'm seeing some shortcomings there. For example, moving around the 3 visitors parking spots, clearing up that issue, with unit number 1 to, you know, try to make that a safer entryway. There's some issues here that are outstanding. We could condition those kind of things, or we could, ask you to make a more complete site plan, to take to city council. And, I guess I'd get your feeling on that. You know, we have, well, basically 3 choices: approve as is, deny, or continue to another hearing, where we can have a more clarity in the site design.
So can one of those choices be, approval upon, and then you list those conditions?
Yeah, that's one proposal, but you know, the
So
city council really wants
we'd be happy to comply with that, if that's.
but this, may take another hearing to again review what the final product is before it goes to council. Because the last thing council wants to do is to not be clear on exactly what's in front of them, and they don't want to negotiate these finer details that in fact, is the worst thing that you could do. You know, not have, you know, absolute 100% clarity in the design. And that's where, you know, their concerns come immediately, that they're not seeing everything on the paper that meets the requirements. We can condition things, but that still doesn't give us, a review before the council hearing. You know, I mean, these are pretty simple kind of things that, you know, my predilection at this point is, to look to a continuation, have a drawing, you know, for example, I would like to see Unit 1 moved or gone or subtracted, whichever, you know, the safety issue there, for example, is really, paramount in our consideration and design. It's, you know, it's the dog park on the other side, or is it on this side, is the bridge, you know, when is that going to be built? We're still kind of, foggy on some of these notions. I know, you know, you'd enjoy another trip back to the beautiful city of Caldwell to bring, an application that we could forward to the city council without them having to, examine these issues on their own, and that, makes them very unhappy and not inclined to grant approval if they have to do that. So, I don't think the application is, up to the standards that we like, from the standpoint, number one, completeness, and from two, clarity, and three, I think can be a better design. And, you know, I know all this time is money and all that, and if there's any consolation, I think the approach is valid. I think that you're really close, but, because of the nature of the PUD and the, you know, the density trade-offs that would be granted under this proposal, this has to be really sharp. And,
Can my engineer would like to say something on that, is that possible?
absolutely, signed up. We also have someone else signed up,
That's him, I just.
Okay.
He was on the Zoom when, yeah, it was.
When he was sworn in.
Yeah.
So my name's Caldwell, 3035 West, 115 North in Layton, Utah.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Just a couple of items that, hopefully to clarify. You know, it's been mentioned several times that this is a difficult piece, which it is, and the shape being a triangle causes that, it's much more difficult to develop in than a more rectangular shape. Given the easement off the canal and the 25 and the 15-foot landscape setbacks off the road, make it difficult, especially on the ends, to do things. So those constraints really have limited how we've been able to lay out the development, and given the access restrictions off of Florida and USTIC, the design of the road, the units there really isn't room to change much for that reason. The open space, we calculated that in CAD. I agree, it's difficult to calculate odd shapes given dimensions and things. But we do have, we do meet the ordinance by having over 10% of qualifying open space without the piece across the canal. As far as Unit 1, the ordinance says that the driveways need to be 40 feet away from the intersection if it is commercial or industrial, but under residential, it can be 20 feet. And where this is a residential product, we feel like where we have placed Unit 1,
still complies with the ordinance. It may not be the most desirable, but it complies with the ordinance. I think that's kind of the only thing I wanted to clarify, unless you had some additional questions.
No, just, we've had the questions, with the applicant. I think that's sufficient, but we would like to discuss the points, that you brought up, and, you're welcome, to, rebut, the statements we're going to talk about. So I'll give you that opportunity. We have further discussion here. It's kind of hard to discuss, at least for me. I don't know where the voice is coming from. I'm sort of new to this sort of thing, but thank you. If you would stay on the line, I'll give you the opportunity to rebut. With that, Ms. Johnson, if that finish your testimony, I'd like to have a discussion with the staff, and then I'll give you an opportunity to rebut that discussion. We have Amanda, Award, is that?
Overall, I'm not speaking.
Oh, okay, that's her, Laurel. All right, so you don't wish to testify. All right, so Rob, on the issue of the Unit 1 and its proximity to the ingress egress, you just respond to Mr. Argyle's statement about that, and you know, what do you think the resolution would be for that backing out onto the street problem?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, that's a very good question. My engineering staff have reviewed this, and I have not taken a close look at it myself. I don't know exactly what the dimension is. And so it may be in compliance with the ordinance that the city has. I look at it more just from a safety standpoint, and it's a little bit uncomfortable, and so that's the concern I have. And so without taking a closer look at it and the dimensions, I don't know that I can add any more comment to what we've already talked about.
Okay, it's hard to tell on these small maps. What is that distance, let's say, from the corner of that driveway to the street edge of the property line here? 50 feet, something like that.
It was I think like 32. But I don't have it in front of me, and
So
memory.
the standard is 20 for residential driveways?
That's what the ordinance reads.
Right. I mean, just intuitively, that does seem a little short, particularly, people be coming off of Florida. The speed limit of Florida at that point, or at least now, is that 45 or 50 miles an hour?
No, it's 35.
35? Okay, I'm sorry, I guess that's further south.
It could be 30, actually. 30 or 35 north of Ustick, and then south of Ustick.
Okay. Would that roundabout change that, or would it stay at 30?
Well, the roundabout will definitely slow traffic down at the intersection, and traffic coming out of the intersection will be accelerating. I don't know, by the time they get to that access point, I don't know if they're gonna be at 35 or 25 or 30. I can't tell you that. The one other thing that has been a problem, and I don't know that this would be an issue here, is if you have a car backing out and then another car's trying to come in and then they have to stop, they could potentially be stopping out in the road or close to out in Florida Road where they may be blocking or causing other cars to have to stop. And so it's just a little bit close, to be comfortable, and I don't know, we would normally make the dimension probably to the right-of-way line, and I don't know what that dimension is. Maybe it's not the end of the world, and like I said, we can take a closer look at it and try to make a determination.
So that closer to look, would argue, for a continuation where we can evaluate, the plat a little bit more and make a determination on that. My predilection here is to either eliminate or somehow move the whole stack southeast. I don't know if that's even possible, but, I do believe that should have a little bit more space, particularly if we're talking about landscaping in there. The line of sight to that driveway be even further obscured in that circumstance, and our fencing. So it's not going to get any better. And, safety is a concern there. And the same goes with the tree park installed across the way there. I don't think that we're ready for city council to review this, because there are these items floating around, and I'd hate to give them something like this without a final design that they could evaluate on its merits. Would you agree with that, Rob, as far as we need a little more time on that?
I feel like it's definitely something that we need to look at, whether we want to come back to this body again or push it to city council. I don't know that makes a big difference. I think before we would recommend it to city council, we would want to make sure staff is comfortable with it. But it's up to you, whatever you feel like is appropriate.
Ms. Root, same question. I would feel comfortable with the staff's judgment on this, but I don't think we have a complete application before us, and nothing that I would recommend to the city council, recommend approval to the city council. So would you like to approach this at another hearing, or do you think it'd be sufficient for staff to review it and schedule it appropriately when the conditions have been met for city council?
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. I feel like that we could make the recommendations of what the changes should be, or what we would like to see modified, and potentially take this forward to the council. I think it is going to be hard pressed to pass the muster of council, no matter how many changes we make at this level, because of just the nature of the PUD. With that said, the constraints of the property provide for them opportunity to request relief from some of the amenities and some of the design requirements, and being that it's an infill property of the requirements of the PUD. And, I think it's their job to sell it to council and to this hearing body. So if you feel like you need to continue it and would like to see those changes, or the changes made that you're wanting to see, then we could do that. I'm not sure it's going to change how you feel about the project.
Thank you, Ms. Root. With that, I would open the testimony again for rebuttal from the applicant, and Mr. Argyle.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. I agree with, Debbie's comments in saying that, well, most of them, in saying that, we would be very happy to quickly supply and make these adjustments and changes to be satisfactory for the staff review, and allow the staff to adjust those instead of having another hearing on this side, and go to city council. And just because we feel, we understand and are hearing what you want changed, we feel that those are items that we can change and, provide better renderings, better drawings for you guys with those immense details on there. I apologize, it's a little bit of a learning curve for Caldwell. Other PNCs, we do that on the other stage, so I apologize that, I didn't come prepared for full drawings that show those clear vision on there, so I'm happy to do those for you.
Thank you. I would like to address the issue of, you know, the closeness of the driveway, Unit 1 to the intersection. I would like that resolved in some way. Is it possible to move the whole block, say a few feet to the south, that you just shuffle the whole side of the street?
I'll refer that to my engineer, Mr. Argyle. Scott, can you speak to that?
It would be difficult to do unless we reduce the setback between the units. Given the 25-foot, setback that we have to keep for landscaping, I can't have any road or anything, in that 25 feet of landscaping, and so, it would push the units down far enough that we couldn't make a driveway work on the other end. And like you say, unless we reduce the spacing between the buildings. Right now, we are showing 10 feet of spacing between the buildings.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
The other thing that we could do is we could switch our floor plan by slightly adjusting the floor plans, to be a little bit narrower. I mean, we've had successful units of, you know, 1-car garage instead of 2-car garages, and, you know, they're a little bit narrower. I don't know if that's not really what we wanted to do there. Or upon your recommendation, like we said, we always hate to remove a unit, but if that's what to make the staff happy for review, we could adjust that.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. I think at some point you have to look at, you know, the council denying the project outright or you know, accommodating that safety issue. And that's kind of where it comes down to. Again, I think you're on, you know, the overall design concept is good. I just think the execution needs some work and some clarity, like I said. With that, I think I will close the hearing, make the motion, and we'll go forward with this. The findings of facts for PUD 21-2, Mino Aka PUD subdivision in R2 zone, are as follows. The Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The conclusion of the law, the PUD, and sub, the Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the city council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements are met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. The recommendation for the PUD and subdivision, based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number PUD 21-2, a request for a planned unit development and preliminary plat for a Minoaka subdivision containing 23 single-family residential townhome lots on the subject property R27438 of the 4.56 acres is approved with the conditions of approval listed in Section 10. Section 10, conditions of development, beginning on page 12 of 35 in the staff report and going through page 14 of 34. The staff report is, ends with condition 10.17, and I would like to add a condition 10.18, and as follows, that the plan before us, the plan of record in this application has to be redrawn to clearly show the amenities, the open space, the proposed bridge, and the fence and landscaping treatments. And prior to the hearing before City Council, this will be the design changes and improvements will be reviewed by the city staff, and will meet their satisfaction before it's scheduled at City Council. I'd like to add again item 10.19. There's an issue at the entryway to this project with two things. The unit number one driveway backs out into the traffic and presenting a potential safety hazard to passengers and pedestrians because of its proximity to the intersection in the right-of-way line at the entry point of the subdivision. I'd like to see that moved at least 10 feet or have the unit itself removed, whichever solution is more viable. And on item 10.20, the visitors' parking stalls at the entryway, the 3 stalls, should be moved, another part of the project because they also present a safety hazard to ingress egress into the development. In 10.21, these all the conditions of approval will be reviewed and approved by the staff, the engineering staff, and planning staff to their satisfaction in accordance with the discussions we've had in this hearing before it is scheduled, the hearing at the City Council. And with that, I close this hearing and adjourn the meeting. And thank you very much for your testimony and your attendance.
Goodbye.